Hi, everyone. My name is 4AS, and here is my co host, Mr. Reed. This is the Revolutionary Think Tank podcast, where we talk everything political commentary, political music, and revolutionary thinking. Welcome to the pilot episode, where we're just going to, discuss the why of this podcast and where we're going to move things moving forward. But Mr. Reed, how are you going today?
I am well, thank you, 4IS. How are you going?
I'm pretty good. You know, we've been with the entire year that I've known you, because really, like December is pretty much the anniversary of me knowing you while going on this journey. We've been talking about doing a podcast, and yeah, I guess here we are. But I guess to kind of get everything off on the right foot. You have gotten quite a bit of a following on your YouTube channel, but just yeah, but I guess for people that don't know who you are, tell us a bit about yourself.
All right. Look, long story short, I am from the future. I got to get that one out of the way nice and fast because it always comes up, and it's always a point of conversation. So, yeah, I don't know exactly where I'm from. I believe that I'm from somewhere in the order of 100 years in the future. Um, my time is very, very different to this. We all live more of a digital existence than a physical one, like in this world. We do most of our lives are spent inside. We really only go outside for, maybe to move around a little bit, maybe get some food or some basic supplies, and then head on back to ourselves in order to log in and actually interact with other people and anyone in our universe. So waking up here, like you said, like a year ago, was absolutely mind-boggling to me, for obvious reasons. Getting dumped into basically a new reality would do that to you. But here, everything seems so much more free. Like the way that you guys live, you still interact with each other on a personal level, which is incredible. Like for you right now, for instance, I can see your face. That is something that I'm not used to in my time.
Right. So, wait, so are you saying that it's quite, well, to use the term revolutionary, that the fact that I can see your mouth right now?
Well, look, yeah, that was hard for me. When
Yeah.
I woke up here, my mask was all over the place. It was broken, shattered,
Right.
and so I did a lot of work to try and cover my face up again because when we go outside in my time, we're not allowed to show our faces. Most people wear a plain mask. Um, I've done a little bit of decorating on mine, as you can see.
Yeah.
But yeah, to show one's face, how to describe it? It's more than a taboo. It's embarrassing. It's very awkward. It makes me feel very uncomfortable. It took me a while getting used to showing my mouth, at least. But I find that people here in this time they find a lot more comfort being able to focus on something. So at least if they can see my mouth moving when I'm talking, they've got something to focus on, and it makes them feel a little bit more relaxed in conversations because it's confronting enough, it seems, for people in this time just to see a masked figure coming towards them. So yeah, so being able to see my mouth, it's something that I've had to come to get used to, but it helps me relate to people here and communicate with people, and that's basically now bringing it full circle, I guess you could say. That's the idea of my channel. It's trying to discover and for me, it's a journey of discovery, trying to figure out this time, the 21st century. Such an incredible time for me. Such a free time, still full of all this like natural wonder, as well as all this man-made wonder as well. But like I'm trying to understand how you guys got to this point in the hope that I'll be able to understand where I am from. Because there seems to be a lot of the stuff that's from my time is here, but it's in, I guess, this kind of rudimentary form. It's basically the birthplace of my time, it looks like. Many of like the simple functions that you have here in this times, like in terms of the digital realm, seem to be where much of the infrastructure of my time has come from. So I'm trying to, in my channel, with all of my content, whether that be music, video logs, poetry, just general artwork, I'm trying to make a link and understand historically how we got here in the 21st century, how I got here in the 21st century, and then how we get to my time, whatever that is. And if there is any real connection, is the future that I'm from, because it's not like this time. I would say it's rather bleak. Some would describe it dystopic. And I'm trying to see if there is a link there. And I'm hoping there's not, but if there is a link there, hopefully there's something that I can do now with this opportunity to stop my time from happening, to stop my world from coming to fruition. And so that is the overarching intent of my channel and all of my work here in this time.
No, that's very fascinating, because I did get it. It was quite palpable, that sense of what you were saying before, where because it was quite taboo and you felt really uncomfortable, like having the lower half of your face exposed, if you will. Like I do get that palpable nature that you felt naked, like when that first kind of happened to you, when you first came to this time. And I can definitely get the sense that, well, where you come from, the past is incredibly censored. Because the fact that you don't know your history, like where you came from, like that's just really interesting, knowing that the internet nowadays, because really at the click of a finger, you can get anything that you want. So if you're saying,
such an amazing tool, the internet in this time, so accessible, as seems to be very much, I guess, responsive to the user, in the sense that not only are you getting information, you can find what you want, you can upload and contribute in any way you want. And it seems to be a good database, and even a historical log of events, and any type of data that people want to store on this platform that is just freely available to all. And so I'm able to piece together a lot of the history that's led us up to, I guess, this point in time. And then I'm trying to use that understanding to try and piece together where I'm from. But like, that's not how the digital realm works in my time. Like you said, it's completely controlled and censored, and it's, you don't have any reality and understanding. What I'm starting to learn, you don't have any type of grip and understanding of where you sit historically or chronologically in relation to anyone else that you meet and interact with in the digital realm. So you were completely displaced from a sense of time. And I'm like kind of obsessed with this kind of time. I guess that's why I like this kind of historical pathway and trying to explain things from a historical perspective and try to understand how everything has come to being, because like time is just this warped kind of sense and understanding in my world, because like you said, everything is heavily controlled and censored. And so you never really know. You never really know where you are, what's going on, what's real, what's not, because who knows who's feeding you the information and whether it's real or not. Hopefully it is, but there's every chance that it's not at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you'll feed us some breadcrumbs as to what your future, what the future is in store for us, and maybe you might help us, not have that future develop, or that's that sort of thing. But I guess we've been talking about your channel and how you want to influence our world. But I guess if there are viewers that don't know who I am, I'm 4IS, or I guess if you kind of say, because it is an acronym.
How is it actually stated? So like you can see my logo, mystery, mystery, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But like 4IS, 4 eyes?
Yeah, I guess with mine it's I guess it's 4IS, but it's supposed to stand for 4-eye system. Though I'm quite comfortable with 4 eyes as well, because that kind of rolls off the tongue. But I guess the reason why it is 4-eye system, because I'm a man who loves his history. I also come from a finance background, so I am very passionate about uh, my finance and also economics. And it's just something that I've noticed time and time again, that capitalism, and at least the structure of political societies as well as financial in societies, it follows this 4-eye system. So to put it in more concrete terms, what I like to say on my channel, as well as on my Facebook page and everything, is that there are 4 eyes of capitalism as I see them. That we started off with integrity, and integrity leads to innovation. Innovation leads to inequity, and then inequity leads to insanity. So I guess this is more developing into our political parts of our podcast moving forward. But really, you just have to look over the last couple of years how insane things have been. Like the Black Summer bushfires was very much a flashpoint for, I guess, the Australian political system, and how climate change has basically been raging through our environment, that you could have such a singular moment where the whole of Australia is on fire. But really, leading up to that point, over the last 100 years, the human society has innovated so well. But for the last, I don't know, I would say 20 or 30 years, we've basically been stuck in a rut where we noticed that we innovated to a certain point, and then we just kind of want to recycle that technology of that time. So, really the coal, the gas industry, and like, don't get me wrong, like I'm sure those billionaires want to hang on to those industries, but renewables is coming in, and I think everyone is very well aware of the doom and gloom of climate change. And really, it's pure insanity to kind of hold on to something when, in, I guess, Tesla proportions, there's something on the horizons that's just cheaper for society, but also in order to battle carbon emissions and that sort of thing, we have to innovate again. So it ends up being a vicious cycle. And I guess with my channel, I kind of want to explore that these political systems, that they kind of have developed into a vicious cycle. And yeah, I guess what I would like just to kind of paint a picture is, I'm also obsessed, because like you might have noticed that I said inequity in that. I know equality is its much sexier young cousin, because it's quite an interesting term, interesting as well as like simple term to focus on, because everyone gets their share, everyone gets a piece of the pie. It's quite simple, but really, equity is such a term where things get interesting, because not only are you wanting for everyone to get an equal share, but you're also going that extra level where you're basically allocating needs to people when kind of when they need it. I like using the picture of you have a father.
That's the very famous picture of the fence and the boxes.
Yeah. Like you have the father, you have the eldest son, and then the younger son. And equality is they're all watching the baseball game, but they all have a basically
everybody gets the same box.
Where a milk crate, which they're all standing on. The father can see quite comfortably. The eldest son can just see what's going on, and then the younger son just can't see anything at all. But equity is the father just doesn't have a milk crate at all because he can see things quite comfortably. You have the younger son that has one milk crate where he can just see over, and then the youngest son who has two milk crates because he was the one that needed the assistance. Also, really, that's where you have cartoons where when discussing the education system, you have all the different animals, like you have an elephant, you have a monkey, you have a fish, and that sort of thing. And a teacher goes to them and it's like, hey, we're going to do this standardized test to see exactly how smart everyone is. Everyone, the test is for you to climb that tree. So obviously the monkey does it spectacularly. A few of the other creatures that are on there, kind of struggle up, but that sort of thing. But the fish probably thinks he's dumb because that's the standardized test.
No chance. So in that, then if you look at those two pictures, you're saying then, let me get this straight. The equality is everyone sits the same test. That's equal.
Yeah.
But it's not equitable in the sense that not everyone has the same tools to climb a tree.
Well, yes. And I think not many people kind of explain that nuance. And really, finance systems and political systems are quite complicated. And I guess this kind of...
When you look at something like the social welfare system, that in a lot of countries, a lot of developed nations, the social state, they are needs-based. They're needs-tested.
Yes.
Before somebody can get access to welfare payment or some type of disability test, it's needs-based. So then your needs would dictate to you the level of care that you receive from your government, the level of assistance that you receive from your government, from your community and such like that. So that's more of an equitable approach as opposed to being like, all right, everybody gets $300. That's equality.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of some of the stuff that you're talking about. So we've gone through what, 2 I's now? So it's innovation. Or was there one before that? Or is it innovation?
Well, it was integrity. It was innovation.
Integrity, innovation, then
inequity, and then insanity.
Anything on integrity that we should know? What about integrity? You didn't touch on that.
Well, really,
what's a 4ISU on integrity?
Well, really, with any sort of political system and finance system, I think it's self-explanatory that people always go into any sort of system with the best intentions. I wouldn't say that it's really anything more complicated than that. And really, when a system first starts,
so, but like, are we talking here? Are we talking? Yeah, we're talking first start. We're talking at the origin here.
Yeah, of course.
That's when we enter into something with a level of integrity, right?
Yeah, and really, you can see with welfare systems that's definitely the case. That you basically see a need and you kind of fulfill a need, but then when you have different political ideologies clashing, so I don't know how much of your Australian history that you know of, Mr. E, but Medicare is a classic example. that you have a system that's been brought in by, I would say, a more progressive government in Australia. And when you have a more conservative government come through, they're more than happy to basically cut the funding for that sort of progressive or welfare-based system. So, say, for example, if there was a certain type of surgery, like, say, for thrombosis with the legs or that sort of thing, it might be something extremely costly, or it might be something that's extremely costly and maybe something that people on an average basis don't use that much. So it's quite quickly on the chopping block, but you therefore leave those minority of people left out in the cold, because the Medicare system, the system that was there to cater if people didn't have private health insurance, you've basically just left them out in the cold, and it loses its integrity, the reason why it was there.
So the integrity spawns the innovation. The innovation, as it dies away with the integrity is being lost as well, leads to inequity. And then inequity leads to?
Insanity. And I guess
the final pillar of the 4IS.
Yeah. I guess where I was going with that is, well, I guess what I was kind of saying before with the climate change situation is that really you have a situation where a flashpoint like the Black Summer bushfires, where climate change is basically on everyone's doorstep, but you still have a conservative government that is completely willing to remarket gas companies and, I guess, coal-powered fire stations as clean coal, and try and invest in carbon capture, which science has actually proved is complete rubbish. Like, that's not how to, I guess, lessen your emissions. And you completely ignore that all the scientists, especially scientists that are Australians, and the technology has basically left our shores. Those scientists have been like, well, the government won't invest in us, so I'll go to Europe, I'll go to other parts of Asia and develop my technology, because they're willing to do, research and development into our things. And it's just fascinating because Australians...
This is part of the insanity? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. Like, it's, something's just staring you in the face, especially when here in Australia, we're surrounded by a lot of sun. We're surrounded by a lot of wind. We're surrounded by a lot of water. But nobody decided to say, maybe we should, make use of this energy, because it's the energy of tomorrow. So that's where the insanity develops.
Right. So as the innovation crumbles, the insanity creeps in, and here we are. Now, and right back, you link this all, these 4 eyes didn't come out of nowhere. They're unique, or they're a product of the capitalist system.
Yes.
Okay, so this is your channel, in a sense, then, is some form of critique of our economic political system that we are all living under and subject to, or subject of, here in the 21st century.
Yeah, because just to give you like a little teaser, I guess at the moment I've been at least doing all of the groundwork, but there are a lot of theorists that are out there that do kind of focus on at least capitalism and political structures, how they do actually have a lot of sway over us. So we do kind of find ourselves in these kind of insane scenarios. Like, just to give you a little taste, at the moment, I've actually been looking into Foucault. Michael Foucault is a French theorist, and he's actually, like, in the book I've been reading, not many people know that in the later half of his life, he has a whole series of lectures based on governmentality and how discipline and power are actually inbuilt to the way governments do discourse. And I found it quite fascinating how, because he's big on power, he's the guy that introduced us to the panopticon. And if people don't know what the panopticon is that it's basically this device that's in the center of a prison, and all of the prisoners, their cells are very exposed where people can see into it. And a guard can be basically in this little tower, and they can see everything that the prisoners are doing, but the prisoner can't see whether there's a guard in the in the tower. So they're constantly on alert. They're constantly fearful, and I guess want to be on their best behavior. And basically, Foucault takes these ideas, this kind of metaphor from another theorist, Jeremy Bentham, and he basically puts it on governmentality. And he talks about, how it was developed in war times, and then the structure of language basically forms, like, places a certain power over people, and they're forced into, I guess, performing in a certain way, which is to the government's best interests. And you can just see over the last couple of years with the whole COVID pandemic that these kind of structures have influenced the citizens of any sort of country. Like, all you have to do is look at the word mandate, because, a COVID mandate, you have to get a vaccine, you have to follow these strict rules, but it's there for the benefit of the citizen. Because really, when you talk about vaccines, it's, at least according to the science, it's our best known, I guess, fight against the COVID pandemic. But Foucault, I feel like, would say to that, yes, but the idea of mandate, the concept of mandate, it's placed a power over you that you can't escape from. And I find those kind of ideas very interesting.
Mm, mm. So I guess this might bridge us into, I guess, the next part of what we should be talking about.
Yeah.
What is it that we do? What will we be looking at in our channels? What will we be doing over the next few years? What's the type of content that we're creating? What is influencing us? Our journeys of discovery, our stories. And so you've mentioned that you've been reading a bit of Foucault. So he's a philosopher, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. Yes. 20th century philosopher. French, obviously, well, the name. Yes. He's from Paris as well.
Yeah, I guess.
From the outer suburbs, I believe. Of Paris.
Yes.
Working class origins.
Yeah, I would definitely say that.
Interesting choice. A working class man, like Foucault.
Very, very much so. And I would say that at least a lot of the theorists, because I think it's fairly obvious at this point that I feel like it's very obvious that I feel disenfranchised by the way capitalism and our current political and finance structure has played out over the last 10 to 20 years, that I guess I've kind of personally gone on a journey viewing I guess alternate political structures, and also alternate philosophies, as well as ideologies.
We're talking about social sciences, political sciences, stuff like that. Yeah.
And like another theorist that I've done a massive deep dive because I do have that finance background is definitely Karl Marx, because I can tell you right now, Das Kapital, it's a very thick book. And I guess because he definitely likes talking in his premises and conclusions, like that sort of philosophical background. I've just found it very fascinating looking at different ideologies, and he talks a lot about how capitalists structure their societies, and talking about a use value of a certain commodity and the exchange value that it has with other things. And I kind of find it very fascinating. So I guess, at least from my perspective, what I want to kind of get out from this podcast is take people along with our love of knowledge and our discovery of, I guess, alternate structures to our current society. And is there lessons we can learn from the past, which is kind of linking back to what you were saying? And is there different ways we can do it in the future?
Yes. Yeah, look, I've been on a similar trajectory with some of my research and reading. Recently, I've been looking at a book by Thomas Piketty, who's another Frenchman, and he's written quite an extensive analysis, although he probably wouldn't say himself that it's extensive enough, although it was quite a hefty book, about capital in the 21st century.
Right.
The idea of wealth, income, and total income, which is a combination of both, and how that influences society and has taken its shape historically since probably the time of the French Revolution, so the modernizing of the world, the liberalizing of the world, up until this point, because he tends to see in his own view as an economist that you can't look at things economically, politically even. You can't look at them on a year-by-year basis or in every 2 years or in a small gap or time period like that, because there are certain anomalies that will occur in financial systems, economic systems, and you need to be looking at things over a broader time, a minimum of a decade, I think, is the time frame that he looks at. So he looks at things in century-long bite sizes. And like multiple centuries sometimes, if he can get the information and access to it. And he gives us quite a good history of capital and what capital means in the 21st century.
Yeah.
So if that ties in to Karl Marx, who was obviously writing in the 1850s onwards.
Yeah.
Here we are, 2022. I have to get used to saying that. 2022. What's that? Almost 200 years later now, what we're talking about here. He would, just by his accumulation of data and I guess some of the theories that he puts forward after analysing the data that he's collected, he's kind of like a modern day Karl Marx in a sense.
Yeah.
Lacking, though, that kind of social revolution kind of drive, or that penchant for social revolution. I'd say he's more of a reformist. Like, he has some good ideas based on his data and his interests about how to reform systems to make them work again for the many, not for the few. So, like that, in that sense, he's a bit of a Karl Marx. He uses economic analysis with a blend of philosophy. To try and drive home some important lessons. And his is tailored specifically to the 21st century. I guess the most interesting takeaway from his look at things is how capital is defined today. And it's very different how it was in Karl Marx's time.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, while Karl Marx is extremely relevant, and like I go there, like the stuff I'm researching at the moment is before Karl Marx. I'm looking at stuff from the Enlightenment mostly. My journey starts as a time traveler who's interested in knowing why we are here now and what led us here. Really starts with the French Revolution. Now, other people would say revolutionary speaking, and here we go. That's the coin phrase or the term of the podcast here, the revolutionary think tank. If you look at it from a revolutionary perspective, I know the American Revolution predates the French, and I know it's important. Some would argue that it's not really a revolution, the American. Some would argue that the French Revolution wasn't a revolution either. Yeah. But like, I think from a Western perspective primarily, and then from a globalized perspective after that, the French Revolution is one of the most important, or if not the most important event of modern history.
Right.
Because it is the thing that unleashed liberal democracy on the world, which is what we live in today, and which is what your friends, 4IS or 4Is, the capitalists seized in order to take control of humanity. So if monarchs and aristocrats piggybacked feudalism and medieval culture to bring about their reign for 1,000 years, then it is capitalists on the back of liberal democracies who have been able to take the planet by storm. They haven't been able to, they don't politically organize themselves. I would say capitalists, that's not their business. Their business is business. But they use the political tool or the political machine that is our liberal democracies. And the birth of the liberal democracy, again, look, I know that the Americans had already done this. They tried republicanism, but the French really made it something that was palatable for the rest of the Western world and spread across Europe because of them. The Americans were very different in the sense that the Americas at that time, it was a new world. It didn't have any of the drawbacks of the old world. It didn't have any of the, I guess, the chains and of the baggage holding it down and pulling it down socially. If you got to America, didn't matter if you were rich or poor, you had far more opportunity to make something of yourself. So there, the American Revolution was just, without offending anyone, any Americans out there, the American Revolution was a grab at making sure that their freedom was theirs and was not going to be dictated to them by their European counterparts. The French Revolution was a social revolution in the sense that they needed to break the mold of the dominant form of control on continental Europe or in continental Europe, which then had effects that flooded the world. And that's why we have the liberal democracies that we have today and capitalism that's just spread across the world on that back. Even in areas that don't have liberal democracies now, capitalism is the main economic form and function. But it's been able to piggyback on the back of liberalism, which is an important Enlightenment ideal. And, if you're like, to bring it back to what you were talking about before in terms of, alternate social structures, alternatives to capitalism, liberalism in itself was this alternate form to feudalism. It was an alternate form to the bonds of a class-based, a clearly class-based society. It was very, very structured. It was very clear if you lived in the feudal age, that the aristocrats had this level of power, the clergy had this level of power, and you didn't cross over into that band if you were from below. and you definitely didn't go down if you're from above. Everything was based on inheritance and your privilege from your birthright. And liberalism was the complete opposite of that. It was based on supposedly rationality, and rationality, there's no place in the rational mind for inheritance or being a birthright. Meritocracy is the way of the liberalized world. And capitalism, while it's been able to achieve so much, like your name suggests, it is also self-defeating. And so it has in it, and Karl Marx likes to talk about this, inbuilt self-destruct sequences. And so that, I believe, is in a stark contradiction to liberalism and the Enlightenment goals. Liberal democracies were not supposed to be, or they weren't envisaged as just a vehicle for capitalists. Capitalists existed well before liberal democracies were a thing. Yeah. Capitalists were around for a long time doing their thing, and it was them who hijacked that mode in order to take supremacy in terms of economic control. But liberalism has never, I believe, really had the chance to take its hold on the world. Liberal democracies especially, because they've been hijacked by money and power. But liberalism in its truest sense, and if we go back now, this is why I've come here. Thanks for being patient with me because it took a while to get here. But the alternative social structures to capitalism are still built on these old liberalist or liberal ideas. And I mean liberal in the old sense. I'm not talking about the Liberal Party in Australia or what people describe liberals in America, like, the Democratic Party. I'm talking about like old school Enlightenment liberalism. And their ideas, like, French Revolution, their ideals, equality, fraternity, that is still this core value that has just completely been missed or whitewashed. It's just gone, been washed over, and people have kind of forgotten about that in the frenzy that was the last 200 years. And these alternate social structures that we might talk about in later episodes, and when we look at our content and stuff, something like socialism, scary word, anarchism, forms of totalitarianism even, are attempts to enact these liberal ideals. Equality, fraternity, the American style, the pursuit of happiness, life, liberty, all that sort of stuff.
But like going back to Marx, you can even see those sort of things in action because, hey, it was very revolutionary at the time that, it was a very well-formed idea of you have somebody at the top, a part of the ruling class that had the capital and had the means of production and put the workers to work in order to make their capital. It was very revolutionary at the time to present an idea of flipping that on its head and advocating, hey, why does the capitalist have to have the capital? Can't the workers own that capital or the means of production? And instead of having a top-down system, why don't we have a bottom-up system?
And so that's a form of trying to achieve the liberal ideals. There was this great sentiment in the world around the fall of feudalism and going into I guess the movement away from centralized monarchical government control. So people were excited, and they really had these high hopes for the actual idea of liberty and what freedom meant for not just in society but the individual.
Yeah.
And so, like socialism, like what you're saying,
Yeah.
why should one person own the means of production? Shouldn't it be evenly distributed amongst all that partake in that mode of production?
Hmm. Well,
That's a liberal. That's a liberal goal.
yeah, because like, and that probably bleeds into another point we were going to discuss today is that, well, I think a lot of people with these sort of ideas, they either don't understand the nuance behind the ideas, or they've just gotten a straw man argument of that idea. So we'll probably discuss it on a different podcast episode, but like in one of your videos, you discuss the idea of private property. And Karl Marx kind of goes into this idea of a lot of people, when they think of private property, they're like, oh, well, you as a socialist, does that mean you'll want to take away my home? Well, that's actually not true at all, because Karl Marx very clearly states that there's a difference between private property and personal property. He has no problems with you owning a home, but do you really need four mansions that are over $1 million where you make your renters pay 10K worth of rent a week? Like,
If you rent them out, maybe you just go there and visit it once or twice a year, if that. Maybe you just sit on it because you're hoarding. But yes.
Yeah. But like, I guess not many people discuss that nuance. And well, if people, what they say is knowledge is power. And
And that's why we're taking like you said, we got a bit of a thirst for knowledge, and that's why we're taking this type of historical approach on things, looking back at the roots of things to try and understand them better, to get a better grip and an understanding of how to confront the problems of this time. You're looking, as your name suggests, I guess, in terms of a critique of our current system. And, how do we do it better? I am trying to stop my time from happening. So if I have to learn everything that I can about how we got to here to stop it developing further into what I have witnessed as that are things to come, then my only mission is, how the hell am I going to stop that from happening? And so, like, you'll see as a little signature in the end of my content, it's like, will you join the movement? Because, like, I can't do this alone. And I know you can't do it alone either. So we're trying to start a little movement here. And hopefully that little movement will grow. But we're trying to get things moving so we can make some change, some positive change, whatever that is, whatever that may be.
I guess what you could say your goal is I guess going back to the future, but a future that you can be proud of.
Right. Yeah. Constructing that. Yeah. Actively participating in a more improved version of the world that I am from, whether that be micro, like, whether that means like a small part of the freedoms that are still exist in this time are transferred into the time that I'm from. And like, even if it's like the smallest freedom, like being able to go outside without covering my face, that'd be something. That would be something that I would be able to proudly say that I have contributed to allow people from my time to be able to understand what it's like to be human. Before the craziness, the rigidity, the government control, the rhetoric, the censorship, before everything that just restricts our life completely takes over and becomes normal. If I could stop that fractionally from happening, I'd be happy. If I could stop it all, hey, I'd be laughing. But like, yeah, that's the intention, absolutely, to improve on what I have seen coming. And if all I can do is just be a dire warning and just spread a warning to people out there in this time that this is real. This stuff is happening. You know, like you've touched on some certain issues this afternoon, you know, that you see are pertinent moving forward in terms of just humanity's, I guess, ability to survive just moving forward on the planet. Those are the things that I'm going to try to touch on and to try and, I don't know, make people aware of them. Like we were talking about before, you know, knowledge is power in a sense. If you're aware of something, then you're able to, I don't know, at least make a good decision about whether to move forward on that basis with that knowledge now. And so, yeah, if I could be a warning at least to people, and that's where the music comes in as well. So like our musical content, which there is already a lot out. There's stuff on YouTube, there's stuff on Spotify that we have already. We've got a song, our first collaboration really, about this time last year, wasn't it?
Exactly. That's when King Kev Says came out. And I because really those songs cover very unique problems within our system, which I think we can definitely tie into, you know, the literature that we read, the big concepts that we want to tackle, like even to use an example, if we want to talk about media bias, or if we want to talk about the media in general, King Kev is a perfect song to kind of tie into that.
Yeah, it's a great narrative for setting up, I guess, a little bit of an understanding on what it means to be a political figure, an underdog, I would say, kind of figure that has a multinational media conglomerate, coming down with the full weight of their force to try and stop you at every turn, and try to crush you before you get anything really substantive done. So it's a good narrative for how important the media is in the political landscape. And it's fun. It's a fun song. That's what I like about it the most, because like music is very, very important. I guess we'll have to touch on this in future episodes and stuff like that. But music for me is very, very important because it is something that does not exist in the same way from where I'm from. Music is another expression of your freedom here that you just all take for granted, but like it just doesn't exist in the same way in my time. But you guys just, you just make it if you feel like it, That doesn't happen where I'm from. People don't make music. They enjoy it. They listen to it. They consume it. I guess would be the primary word there, but they don't freely express through music. And like King Kev is a great form of expression because it's fun. It's a bit of fun, especially the video clip.
Yeah,
hilarious. And it gets a bit of a message across. Like the meta narrative is what you're talking about, media control.
Yeah, I guess there was one of the things that I found quite fascinating about your world is that, well, me personally, I do come from a family where we all grew up learning an instrument, where it was, music is just a part of life. And like, I understand that not every person likes music, or at least participates in it, but it's a huge part of our culture. And for that to not be part of the culture in the future, it just seems completely mind-boggling for me. And I think a lot of people, when they do think of politics, they think of, what we're doing right now. They think of a podcast, they think of talk shows, they think of press conferences, but not many people think of music. And really, it's music that it lends a different medium to how a message can be shown.
Yes.
And Also, you have to be incredibly clever with how you show it as well, because you can only say so many words in a short space of time.
Yeah.
So you have to be on the money.
Yeah. You got to be concise and creative.
Yeah.
Two factors which, in and of themselves might be readily achievable, but when combined can be quite difficult to get going and working together. But like we would know from collaborating, sometimes having a bit of a constraint actually is the thing that gives you the inspiration and provides you with something amazing to work with in the end. When you've kind of got no parameters, it's actually harder to make art sometimes and make music. But like when you've really, crunch, okay, we're going to try and work within this framework and then can come up with something that's, got a message, tells a story, and does all of this in a catchy way and is playable on the radio. So it has to be under 4 minutes. It's a challenge, but I think it does help our creative process in a way. It gives us something to strive towards. But then, music is a very important platform for political messaging. And like you've described your music as political, I think you've called it political music, political rap. See, I don't like that descriptive term for my music. I like to call anything that has a political edge, any musical of that nature, I like to call it protest music. Primarily, as I feel, when I'm making this type of music with a political message, I'm not singing a party line. This isn't like, Stalinist Russia, where, we are the workers of the world and we're going to, destroy capitalism. It's not like promoting a party line as much as it is being enraged at some part of the system or the establishment and trying to awaken people. Like we've talked about this already, awaken people, make them aware about this political issue in the form of a protest, in this case, protest music.
So like,
I like to look at it.
So I guess what you're trying to do is basically distance yourself and also show a divide between what you would consider propaganda and what you consider protest music.
Yes, I would say that there is a fine line and it's a grey area because King Kev could definitely be seen as propaganda because it is something that's kind of, what's the word? It's really praising, I guess, King. It sets King Kev, it sets him up as this massive protagonist and it sets up his counterpart as this, I guess, evil villain. So it's definitely in the realm of propaganda, but it's not pushing a specific party line in the sense it wasn't endorsed by a particular party and it wasn't commissioned by a political entity to try and attain a certain goal. It was primarily about commenting, and this is that meta-narrative that we were talking about before, about media bias and how unfair it is that some people have such a hard slog and really have to be quite incredible to make it through the system to get where they are against all the odds. And let's be honest, the media is one of the most influential and important machines in the political sphere in the Western world, across the globe. So for someone to be able to make it through that system, it's worth giving a bit of a protesty kind of shout out to them, and that's why I think there's a difference between propaganda or political rap or political music and protest music. That's how I like to think of it.
Yeah, but also to use that word I've used before, Flashpoint, is that the thing about King Kev, and I'm sure we can go about this in more detail, like in another podcast episode, but it was a flashpoint where it became very obvious that a certain individual had so much power and they could influence a political system,
On a
or a
national
system.
scale.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and a former prime minister thought it was his civic duty to come back into the limelight and say, enough is enough. Like whether you agree with that individual or not, who came back into the limelight in order to protest against this person with massive power, you can't deny that it was a massive, poignant moment where the you know it, politics was very naked in the sense of, hey, this person has a massive influence on the media, has a massive influence on our political system and our democracy. You need to know this, people.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that was a huge that was a huge moment in history.
Yes. Yeah. And that's why this, I think it's a good example of this is the music that we're creating when we collaborate. And
Mm.
even when we're making stuff individually, or collaborating with other people, I think that we both have this kind of
Curious mind.
curious mind, this taste for music that tells a story with an important message.
Mm.
And it's more of the feeling of some type of change and improvement and getting people to be aware of stuff, which is the content that we're trying to create generally. But music is a very, very unique component in that content creation. It's very different to a podcast, very different to a YouTube upload, or to putting some poetry up, or putting up a video log where you're talking about some important issue or some event of the day. Music it's very, very different medium, but I think it can be very effective, especially when done well. It can get a message across to an audience that would otherwise not be interested in the other content that I just described.
Yeah. And I know you probably already know the answer to this, but I was hoping to kind of use this as a little game to always round out our podcast episodes. This might be a little bit unfair to the people that are listening to the audio rather than probably watching the playback on YouTube. But I've actually recently gotten into this AI simulator, which basically what it does is you give it a certain prompt, like a certain phrase and that sort of thing, and it basically creates an artwork using that prompt into a certain style. And I've been getting into my synthwave art lately, and I was actually hoping to use these artworks for a little game where if we have, like, say for example, a guest on the podcast or that sort of thing, they can guess the prompt behind the art, because you can do various styles, but um, you probably already know the answer to this because we were discussing it before.
Yeah.
But for the prompt, I made a comment about whether I guess a certain political party would win the next election, and what the AI system brought back to me was this godlike figure that was basically surrounded by all of these screens. And well, it's very apt with what we were talking about before, but I felt like this godlike figure very much looked like he who should not be named in the media landscape. So I thought that might be an interesting little game to kind of play with people to see what sort of prompt I put in. But just to round out the podcast with a little bit of fun. But I just find it fascinating that this AI pulls from the internet all of the influences it could possibly make to generating this art, but without even prompting it, it said that this media mogul had massive influence, was going to have massive influence on the next federal election without me even prompting it. In the prompt, all I mentioned was federal election and a certain party winning it, and it showed me a figure surrounded by screens, and that was just crazy.
It is. It is rather scary, but it's like almost childlike in a sense that you can give like a child, you can ask a child a question, they give you a profound answer.
Yeah.
Because their mind works in a different way and they see the world from a different perspective. AI, you give it a rudimentary, or you give it a phrase and it will find it in a way that is quite rudimentary, but spectacular result, eye-opening result. So it'll be interesting to see if anyone picks up on what your prompts are and then how surprised they are if they can actually stumble across it.
Yeah, I just was floored when that came out because I wasn't even mentioning about media bias. And yeah, like you said, it could have just picked up on the key word of federal election and then it said the media. And it came to a very, I guess, rudimentary or I guess straight to the point
straight to the
way.
Point. Yeah.
Yeah, straight to the point way of
what it found. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah.
But yeah, I felt like we've covered a lot this episode. Hopefully, everyone listening has a bit more of an idea of what we plan on doing with this podcast. And with that, Mr. E, I think we'll probably give this one a wrap. And to everyone listening, everyone watching, keep thinking, keep learning. And yeah, have a good afternoon. Have a good night.
Thank you, 4IS. Thanks for organizing. And for everyone out there, please remember, I am, you are, we are a mystery.